The fateful day occurred in the fall of 1989 when we were videotaping deer on a preserve. These were wild deer, difficult to approach. Our goal was to test 3 substances for their effects on deer: human urine, ammonia straight from the bottle, and aftershave lotion, all dumped onto the ground about 10 or 15 feet apart. We set our cameras so the deer would probably approach from the front, and the breeze was blowing from behind us. It's not the best deer hunting setup, but good for our test. The ammonia is the strongest smell, and researcher Bob McGuire said it undoubtedly was a fragrance that brought in the bucks from a distance. But once getting there, it was the human urine they doted over. Now, this proved that deer can't tell the difference in urines, a finding that should bring much relief to deer hunters this fall. After proving this, we wanted to change our location and try this on some different deer in a crosswind situation. There was a fence to our south. The wind was coming from the east, so it would blow this way in front of our blind. John Ford stacked some limbs and old Christmas trees in a semicircle around the base of a tree, leaving an opening on this side. Now, I left him alone, but before I left, I dumped 10 or 15 ounces of fresh urine in front, along with a good slug of ammonia straight from the bottle. Now, this ammonia is a terrific attractor of deer because urine turns to ammonia when it decomposes. It's a part of every commercial urine scent on the market, and it's probably the main reason deer come into urine scents. With the wind blowing this way and a neck of woods to the west, we wanted to see if the deer that wandered through these woods picked up the scent and came to the ammonia and urine. Well, it worked like a charm. The deer that worked through the woods turned when they smelled the scent. It was the ammonia that was the most pungent and carried the furthest, and when they caught the scent, they walked right towards it. Bucks, not does, were the ones that were particularly attracted. When they got to the area, the ammonia got little attention. It was the urine deposit, which doesn't evaporate as fast, that they doted over just like before. Now, that bottle of ammonia was in the camera blind at John Ford's feet, and he was alone. I was at the other end of the property. I didn't see a single deer. DNR photographer Dave Kenyon was several hundred yards away from John, just out of viewing range. After a half hour or so, I thought I heard John yelling. I got out of my blind, I walked that direction, and John was yelling like he was hurt or afraid. And when I got there, both Dave Kenyon and John Ford were hostages. A buck was holding him at bay. Now, they warned me to get ready to climb a tree, but I worked my way in and grabbed the camera. John was too shook up to tape anymore.
I don't know about you, but I am a little shook up right now.
Oh, yeah?
I am very shook up. I had the deer coming over the top of the camera. It came charging at me twice, trying to gore me, all the time grunting. And I tell you what, he's still grunting out there. And I'll tell you what, I've been to a lot of places with you, Fred, but this is the first time I've ever felt my life threatened by an animal.
Well, it really didn't look to me like this deer was attacking. I've seen bucks in pens getting surly. This one we taped a few years ago had his antlers removed for everyone's safety, but he exhibited all the classic antagonistic behaviors. He pawed the ground, grunted, laid his ears back, his hair bristled on his back, and when you got near the fence, he lunged at the fence. When you tried to get into the pen with him, he lunged. Now this was a hostile buck. But John's buck didn't appear this way at all. I mean, he looked friendly, and he was very interested in the ammonia.
Hey, dear? Hey, you. I need that bottle back. You gonna give me that bottle? You gonna give me that bottle?
Want the tripod?
Huh? You gonna give me that bottle? Come on. Get away from that bottle of ammonia. That costs 82 cents. Get out of here.
This buck walked directly to where I poured. He got his nose right down in the ammonia, and evidently it gave him quite a thrill. A few minutes earlier, when he was over the ammonia deposit, Dave Kenyon reported a most interesting behavior.
He's got a small erection right now.
Does he? Are you serious?
If you have any doubts about the impact of ammonia, it gave this buck an erection. He was sexually excited by the odor. But let's go back in time about 15 minutes when John Ford was calmly videotaping the deer in front of the blind, just as this buck was making his approach from downwind.
I heard something off to my side, and I swung the camera around, and I had no idea that the deer was this close. I mean, this is only about 5 feet away from me. And he was sniffing all around, checking the leaves, checking the ground. And then all of a sudden he just came right at me. I think, obviously this isn't the aggressive part. Until he comes up to me, he puts his head right below the lens and gives the lens a little shot. And then I knew he was very interested. He was getting serious. And here he's, I'm going to flip out the extender here. You can see he's only a couple of feet away from me.
Well, you obviously weren't scared at this point.
No, I wasn't scared, but I thought that was great video, as a matter of fact. I thought it was going to be a fantastic experience here. But he reaches up eventually and starts chewing on the microphone. You can hear it right here. You listen to it.
But like a licking brand.
Yeah, well, licking hand. He's going after my hand at that point.
But you weren't particularly scared, or were you?
At that point, I was starting to get kind of concerned because he seemed so, he kept pushing against me, pushing against the tripod, pushing against the camera, and he definitely wanted to get at me, and it might not have seemed like an aggressive behavior, but it was a very persistent behavior, so.
Didn't you pile up some more Christmas trees to get yourself enclosed?
Yeah, as soon as I got him far enough away from the blind, by yelling at him and then pushing him, actually kicked him in the butt a couple times, seriously kicked him in the butt. I reached behind me, grabbed some more Christmas trees, and threw alongside to close off the entrance. And then, to believe it or not, the deer came up to the side of the Christmas tree, jumped over, it had to be 5 feet high, the Christmas tree, jumped over it, landed in the blind with me. So now here I am, stuck in a blind with the deer, no way for me to get out, with the camera and the tripod.
We found out later that this buck had been bottle fed as a fawn, but seemed to have turned wild again, until the fall when its mating urges took over. My theory is that this buck was imprinted to the human smell when it was bottle fed, and at mating time, the smell of deer or humans, either one, were attractive to this buck. So while it seemed to John like he was being attacked, he was actually being accosted. It was a gentle encounter. The buck liked him.
Well, at the time, it was a very serious matter. I know we can sort of joke about it. Matter of fact, it looks funny to me looking back on it. It really does, but it was really serious because this deer was actually, had his antlers out and was thrusting at me, and I was really concerned at the time.
But John was right in being concerned. Whitetail bucks are not pets. This deer could have easily turned hostile in a moment, which they usually do if they've lost their fear of humans. In small pens where does can't escape, bucks will kill them if they don't mate. John wasn't about to let this buck have his way with him, but fortunately, for the moment, this buck remained a lover and not a fighter, and John Ford avoided a very close call. Crazy situation, isn't it? Now, that's not something that is likely to happen to you when you're in the woods hunting, unless there's a bottle-raised deer, one that as a fawn was raised by a family of humans. A bottle-raised deer like that becomes imprinted to the odor of a human. Now, during most of the year, that deer will go out and mix with the other deer and just live in the wild. But sometimes that deer, whether it's a buck or a doe, can come around people and not just become not afraid of the people, but like you saw with this buck, I think, and this is my theory, that buck went back to its imprinting and the odors it learned when it was being bottle fed, and during the time when it wanted to mate, well, not only did the smell of a deer attract that buck, but the smell of a human attracted that buck. That's why that buck was attracted to our cameraman. A bizarre story, but again, not something that's likely to happen to you unless a buck was released in the wild that was bottle raised when it was young. We're going to be back with a story on bow hunting, so stay tuned.